So how did this all start? Well, we got to go back. We got to go back to 2004. I was born. Okay, now we jump to 2020. Now, even before 2020, I'd always enjoyed the idea of making games and messing with different games that have custom creation tools. Like, think of Mario Maker. But I wanted to branch out a bit as I got older, but I had one problem. I could not code. Now, coding can be pretty hard. It can be very hard. But at age 14, I did not want to take the time and to invest in that, as I didn't really see game development as more than just, oh, that's interesting. So I looked to ways of getting around this. Thankfully, there are a lot of engines that allow you to make games through visual scripting or block coding. So for example, if I want to write hello world, I don't have to type out a script for it. I just press a button to type out the thing I want, and yeah, there you go. And the one I first stumbled upon in January of 2020 was ClickTeam Fusion. I'd heard that it was pretty simple, and I heard that Five Nights at Freddy's had been made in it, so I was thinking to myself, oh wow, yeah, no, I'll try it. And then I go to buy it, and I see the price. From my knowledge, my first games are out there on the internet. I can't find them at all, but I did learn a little bit. As the first iterations of my game, this is all you could do. With the next iteration, you could move back the other way, eventually up and down, and then eventually I learned how to make tile maps, which were basically green squares grass, blue squares water. So realistic. But I eventually gave up on ClickTeam Fusion, as doing anything past that was taking way too much time out of my hands, and I stopped for quite a while. Around June of that year, I was bored and talking with my friends on a Discord call, and we talked about certain ideas we had. This inspired me to get RPG Maker, as I'd heard about it for a while, but I'd always heard bad press about it, and I realize now looking back why that is, of course. But yeah, RPG Maker, it's kind of a little more complex than I'd say ClickTeam Fusion. It's specifically designed around RPGs, and games can have a quick turnaround because the game engine also offers you assets, music, its own battle engine as well. So you can make a game in this thing in about 5-10 minutes if you really want to. And yes, half of the games that are released on Steam through this engine are indeed made in 15 minutes. But I really wanted to make a game that would stand out. And even from my earliest builds, I was starting to do something a lot of the developers wouldn't do, which is use my own assets. I didn't have everything at first. I mainly was doing backgrounds and stuff, but eventually characters, faces, and eventually their sprites in the game eventually changed to the art style that I would use for about a year or so. It was rough. A lot of experimentation, especially at the beginning. I would release builds as often as I could, as I always thought it was cool to see the progress that a developer is making. And it actually works out great because it lets me now see, oh, this is when I figured out that's when I changed this. For example, the school layout was much different. I was just kind of experimenting at the beginning with dialogue and movement, all of that. The music that I would use was copywritten, so I can't really play it. But eventually I'd make more and more assets. Eventually there'd be more story, characters set in stone, enemies like the Snitch or the Karen. And be aware, I have never done pixel art before this game, or I had done it very loosely. This was my first time trying to really hone in on it, so if you're like, wow, that's bad, I apologize. I mean, maybe it's not, I don't know. But point is, I was learning, right? And it did get better. I also started to make my own music at this time, which I've been told isn't the best, but you know, it was starting to be more and more my thing, and it was starting to have more and more my identity. Eventually, I ended up making the school that you'd be at. I made the whole thing, and from there, I had the concept of, I started with the school with almost nothing in it, and then add new NPCs, new objects, clubs you can visit, that sort of stuff. Make it more organic as time progresses. Eventually, in later builds, the art would change too, to be a bit more refined, or at least look a little better in areas such as the school's like floor textures or walls, or the dungeon, which everyone complained hurt their eyes, and I only see now what they meant. The game was supposed to have 10 different arcs where you went to a different country in each one, and the first arc would start you in a school to kind of be like a tutorial. I got around to the third arc when things changed. See, it was around, I think, September of 2021, and I realized this game is taking forever. I decided to make a smaller game using some of the assets I had from Tarot to make a smaller game I knew that I could get done and complete within a few months. When did I come up with this idea? I don't exactly remember, and why the idea also sprang up, but I remember making a trailer for it, and off the bat I already knew I wanted to call it Mysterious Mystery, and it was based around having two characters from Tarot that people really liked and giving them a side story that was more visual novel-esque and gave me a chance to kind of experiment with a different genre as well. I remember I made the entire thing in my credit recovery class, which you're supposed to use to study, but I ended up making a whole game, which you might think is a waste of that time, but, well, look what I'm doing now. Can't really say that was a waste now, huh? But I get to work, and I decide very early on two things I wanted. Portraits, kind of like visual novels where they appear and make the scene more lively. See, in Tarot they were these little faces, but I wanted something that would take up more of the screen. So we upgraded the art. And to also differentiate it, and it's also smaller, I wanted to try out having voice acting in the game. I put out casting calls, and we got some people.
Well, I'll leave it to you to find evidence. Walk around and examine everything you can. Once you feel you have enough, come talk to me and I'll figure out what really happened here.
Got it. Thanks, dude.
So what is MM? Well, it's a knockoff of Ace Attorney. In all seriousness, this version was very, very similar, at least gameplay-wise, where you'd go around and take and collect evidence, and then you'd get into your cross-examinations and have to show evidence on statements that were incorrect, similar to the Ace Attorney games. And looking back, I think it's okay, because you know what? It was a starting point. But eventually it came out. I think I can still remember the day. I think it was May 22nd, because it was the last day of school, and I vowed to myself that I would get it out before the last day, while I was still a junior, I think. And I do remember, I stayed up polishing the game till 5 in the morning, and I had a final the next day. It came out, and my friends played it, and yeah, I actually got really nasty criticism. I don't like telling the story because I feel bad. I don't want to rat out my friends, but it's the honest truth. I got some pretty harsh criticisms, particularly with music and the graphics more than anything else.
I gotta take a second. I'm about to get off to this while I have my seizure.
Story and stuff, the stuff actually I'm less proud of nowadays, was kind of not mentioned as much. But I remember going over to a friend's house and they had a piano, and after listening to some of my music, one of them went, "Hey guys, I'm Walker," and they would slam on the keys on the piano. Now, most of them looked back and were like, "Yeah, sorry we did that." But regardless, I do remember that, and it was a big part of why I stopped for a while. Looking back, it's a rough game. I call it nowadays the prototype, as we'll get to. Nowadays, it's more of a demonstration on what the game can be, but I had to make that to make the other stuff in the future. And for a while that was it. But you know what? Regardless of how good it was, I promised myself I'd finish a project. But I went back to Tarot after that. I kept working on it and I got to around, I would say, half the game done. And my computer breaks. It's actually still okay. It's just the screen was broken, but so much time. 2 years worth of game gone. Over the course of late 2022, I didn't do much. It wasn't until the year after that where I joined my school's video game club and ended up doing some esports in Super Smash Brothers, and I became very close with the teacher there. And I just remember one day we were just talking about games or something else, and I talked about how I made Mysterious Mystery. At this point, I actually didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, and the months were going by and high school was about to end. I remember talking with him about how that was a possibility, and he asked if he could try the game out. And other students found out and they played it, and I would jokingly get the question, when's the sequel? When's the next thing? And that was when I thought, what if I made another chapter, another case? As it was only one mystery in the original. And I always had thought, well, maybe if I made this a full game you paid for, maybe it'd be multiple cases. I thought, why not make another one? Make it a demo and see if people are interested. And I got to work on it, and remember those criticisms I originally got? Well, I took those into account. For art, I actually upgraded the art very early on, and I remember showing it to my teacher, and he was like, yes, that's what your game needs. As I'd been getting criticism about it, and its simplicity, and a lot of people couldn't put their fingers on it, but upgrading the resolution from 32 by 32 to 48 by 48 made a big difference. And for music, I don't really enjoy music, so I hired other people to do it, and even now I still do. So send me your links in the description. No, but seriously, I realized that was somewhere I was gonna have problems with, so I got some very, very good talent to help assist me. Around now was June of 2023, and I was still figuring out what I wanted to do. I wanted to invest in this, but I still had to consider it a little bit, and I figured, you know what? I have some graduation money. I talked with my parents. I'll live off that until I run out of it or I finish this game. I ended up investing a lot of it into the game, but the idea was to just make it better. Remember those old criticisms and make it better. More talent in the voice acting department, more detailed sprites, more interesting music, a longer case, UI elements to be more poppy. Early on, I actually didn't plan on things being animated, but to help kind of stick out from other visual novels, I had someone say, oh, there's not really much going on movement-wise, and I decided from there, characters will now be fully animated. Every emotion had some form of animation now. I decided to go away with the top-down perspective and just go for a more visual-esque point-and-click style. One of the last things I added before I sent it out was this idea where the main character grabs the text box and lifts it up to show you how you can move around. I may have gotten a lot of criticism from the prototype, maybe even a bit too much in some areas, but it really helped me point to the path where I needed to go for this demo, as I call it now. Sadly, it took longer than expected. I was expecting 3 months, but with a lot of procrastination on hand, I didn't really finish it until I think mid-December. But during this time, I realized I don't think I'm going to be able to make this game alone. The biggest two things was, one, funding, hiring the musicians more frequently, the voice actors for a larger scale game. It was going to cost a lot more, and out of my own pocket, I was already running out of money fast. Now, I could have crowdfunded, but my biggest fear was my game wouldn't get that much attention. Until this month, my subscriber count wasn't even past 50 subscribers, and I felt I'm not going to be able to give this game the attention it deserves. If you want an example, my trailer got more downvotes than upvotes when I posted it to Reddit, and I was like, what do I do? So I decided, what if I go to someone directly that can help me with the marketing of this game? So I decided to go and find a publisher. After I'd make the demo, it'd be a slice of what the full game could be. Longer cases, more music, more art, more voice acting, you know, all of that. And I remember the day that I finally got accepted by one. I got rejected by a lot, and in fact, a lot of them didn't email me back, but one did. And I was so grateful for it, and they were willing to give me funding too. And to this day, it's one of my favorite moments, because there was a lot of people in my life who didn't believe in me. And I will be honest, do not do what I did. It was very risky. And even now it's still risky, because I'm still banking on this game having some form of success. But I made it to the next step. I went like 6 months of my parents actually being fairly supportive, but other people around me, friends and family, being a little hesitant to support me, kind of being confused on what I was actually doing. And I don't blame them for the most part. And a lot of them came around this time, but I just want to make it clear. I do not recommend this. You can do this. It worked for me, but I feel I'm very lucky in some regard. But I'm also very proud of the demo that I made, and you can play it right now. Let me know your thoughts. Tell me how butt cheeks it is. But that's how I got a publisher, and because of certain things we discussed, I now live with the intent of I make this game for a living. That's my main day job, is making this game. And in that case, I've accomplished my dream. I'm making this full time. I've been having a blast. I get burned out once in a while. That's why I made this video, take a break from that, and figured I'd share my experience. So now you know my story. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time when I make some video on something else. See you then.
This game was developed by a good friend of mine. On his Discord, he's just Walker, so I just call him Walker. Or I call him Boy. Because he's pretty young, but he's got that entrepreneurial mindset, so that's pretty great. Really proud for him to get this project off the ground. And lastly, thank you to all the voice actors, artists, and friends who helped me get this done. You guys mean the world to me. With that said, sit back and enjoy. I am sure to enjoy it.